Overwatch, the game of 1,000 hours. That's not the amount of time it takes to master, I'm talking about the time it takes to rank up once. Bronze to silver, 1,000 hours. Platinum to diamond, 1,000 hours. Master to gold, one really bad day. Lately, there have been more and more bastions around ever since somebody figured out that he was good against goats. Who knew? So recently I tried picking up Genji in order to counter the bastion. You know, Genji, the cyborg ninja that everybody likes. Genji has one ability called Deflect, which, when used, shoots back any hit scan or projectile shot at him from the front, back at his crosshair. Since Bastion sits in one place, you can just pop down in front of him and blast him away with his own bullets. But my cogs in my mind got turning and I thought, I wonder how Genji can move that fast. Surely that wouldn't work in the real world. So I started crunching some numbers and calculated some figures, and I eventually came out with this video. But don't get too happy, I'm not going to make these videos as often as I am now. I'm no Loxton, you know. First, I needed to know what type of gun Bastion is. Bastion fires at about 30 rounds a second, or at 1,800 RPM. I don't really know much about guns, so I called in some support. Jimbo, the local shopkeeper of guns. Unfortunately, couldn't get a hold of Jimbo. Something about a gun that shot fire or something. So I had to go with my second best source, F22Hunter. So I called him up, and he was like,
Need help with a gun? You may need a new studio after I'm done. Bastion. You either love him or you hate him. He's my primary go-to for damage class in Overwatch because of one thing. The minigun. But why? Why do I like Bastion so much? Well, what if I told you Bastion Sentry Mode is comparable to a real-life minigun that has actually seen combat since the 1960s? Don't believe me? Well, allow me to prove my point then. If you take a close look at Bastion in Sentry Mode, you can see that he has 6 barrels in that configuration. Most miniguns have 6 barrels, sure, but one comes straight to mind when I see Bastion in this mode, the M61 Vulcan. This minigun was developed after the Second World War to allow aircraft to pack more of a punch against targets, especially armored ones. Bastion fires rounds around 30 to 35 rounds a second, or 1,800 to 2,100 rounds per minute. Now, that is slower than most modern miniguns, especially the M61. It can fire rounds between 4,000 and 6,000 rounds per minute, which is twice as fast as our robotic friend. So why am I still comparing him to a modern weapon? It's because of the damage he does to tanks. No, not that kind of tank. That's more like it. What is Bastion known for? He's a shield and armor shredder. That's basically his only use, making holes for his teammates to punch through. Keeping that in mind, several aircraft use the M61 to punch through armor. One comes to mind that this applies to the most. The A-10 Warthog is an aircraft used by the US Army and her allies. The plane was built around the Vulcan minigun, and it has used it to amazing success against enemy armor. The Vulcan is capable of shredding through tank armor because of its high RPM and large bullet capacity. Now, how does this apply to Bastion, and why won't I shut up, I hear you asking? Well, let me answer the second question first. Because I'm a nerd, what makes it worse? I'm a social nerd. To answer the first question, I see Bastion as a nerfed version of the Vulcan minigun. I mean, think about it. The Vulcan can shred through armor in real life against other vehicles. If Bastion was a carbon copy of that minigun, the characters would all be torn in half by his bullet stream. Of course, they had to dial him back to keep him balanced amongst the other characters. I mean, imagine an A-10 bearing down on your position when you're on point. You would not survive! He's crazy. The M61 Vulcan has been used in aircraft from the 1960s to today. Just as a general list, basically all American Vietnam fighters, F-4, F-104, F-100, F-8, the F-105, and all the modern fighters that are in use to this day, F-14, F-15, F-16, F-18, F-22, F-35, and the A-10, just to name a few. So to end my little tirade, Bastion is just a watered-down version of an A-10, and you are all lucky he can't fly. Live long and prosper, y'all.
Thank you, Hunter. But now that I know what type of minigun that he is, I can accurately say that each round executes about 3,300 joules of energy, which is why Bastion has to bolt himself to the floor. That's why miniguns in general have to be bolted to the ground, otherwise they'd blast the person over backwards. But now that we know about Bastion, let's switch over to Genji. Genji has two swords. There's a big one and a little one. And although he can use the big katana when he's using his ult, Genji usually uses his littler sword, which is also known as a wakizashi. I only know this from the wiki, and it said it, thank goodness. So I'm going to be using the wakizashi for all of these calculations, mostly because I can't figure out there's too many different types of katanas out there, so I'm not gonna do that. I had to find the weight for a wakizashi, and I hate doing research. I looked all over Google just trying to find a simple answer. Weight of a wakizashi. I went to some really sketchy sites, and then I averaged out the very, very few wakizashi weights that I could find. I hate doing research, mostly because I can never find what I want. I mean, how simple is it just to look up weight of something and then get an answer? It should be simple. But in the end, the average wakizashi weighs about 1.0143 pounds, or about 460 grams. In order for Genji to stop a bullet with this wakizashi, he'd have to swing and block his sword at a speed of about 118 meters per second. To express this, Genji would only stop the bullet. In-game, he shoots them with as much force to more than the original force depending on the bullet's drop-off. He resets a bullet's drop-off once he deflects. To send a bullet back at the same force he received it in, Genji would have to swing his swords at about 6,600 joules of energy, and at a speed of 168 meters per second. Genji's sword would be experiencing over 6,000 joules of force. That means it would start to deteriorate into little pieces and chunks of metal would come off. But since this doesn't happen, I would either assume A, it's made out of a metal we don't have in our world, or B, it isn't made out of a metal but a metal-looking substance. And I thought that was the end of it. Like, that's really impressive, but... Enter Bastion. Genji doesn't just stop one bullet. He doesn't stop 10. He can stop as many shot at him in the 2 seconds he has of deflect. If Bastion is going ham and unleashing a load of lead, he would shoot about 60 bullets that can be deflected. That's 30 per second. That's one bullet at 1/3 of a second. Genji can move to deflect one bullet at 1/30th of a second. And I thought that was impressive enough. But enter No Limits. In No Limits, you can pick any hero any number of times, meaning you can have 6 Bastions. That means that a Genji can deflect 10,800 rounds per minute. That's 360 bullets in the whole 2 seconds of deflect, and in that amount of time, Genji would release about the same amount of energy as 1/4 of a ton of TNT. Can you imagine the heat coming off of his wakizashi when he uses deflect in this kind of speed? He's gotta have like some sort of computer built into his brain that allows him to do this, because no human on Earth would have that reaction. And I thought that was the end of it. But enter custom games. You can set up a free-for-all with 11 Bastions and 1 Genji. Unfortunately, I couldn't get 12 willing participants, so this is what I have. Yeah, I'm not as famous as to say, hey, guys, I'm doing a thing, can you come? And people will say, oh, yes, we can come. I'm not that famous yet. I'm no MatPat, you know. But at 11 Bastions, that's 660 bullets a second, at a rate of 19,800 rounds per minute. Oh, that is 1 bullet per 1/660th of a second. That doesn't even make sense. He can go over more than enough of Mach 5 to get to a bullet, stop the sword, and move over again at the exact same speed to another bullet, stop that one, over and over, so that he can do it 660 bullets a second. That doesn't make any sense. That's not even mentioning all the other things that Genji can deflect, like sound and gravity and his amazing hacking skills when he deflects a Mei snowball. Snowball goes up against Mei and says, "I don't know who you are, but I'm gonna freeze you. Take that." Like, what? Genji doesn't even make any sense. So, in conclusion, I deem Genji to be nonsensical. Hey everybody, thank you for watching my episode, and please go check out F22Hunter. He helped me with this, with all the guns and such, because I don't know about guns, and he does. So I thought, hey, this will be my way of making him pay me back for doing a few voice lines. Yeah, I only did a few voice lines for his episode, and he did some research for me, so please go check him out. He's a lot better than me, I can tell you that. Additionally, I hope you guys liked that this was more mathy than usual. I know that I probably could have expressed a few more numbers, but then I figured I'd lose a whole bunch of people because everybody would be like, what? So, thank you everybody for joining me, and I'll see you on the next one.